I don't want to be speaking for too long, because I know that really what I'd like to do in this session is to start getting some kind of discussion going between us, all about kind of UKCoRR and about where we're going as an organisation, and especially in light of some of the challenges we're facing at the moment. So, starting off, we are continuing to grow. I mean, we are. A lot of people may feel that at 268 members, we've possibly got everybody who's involved in repositories in the UK. But I'm sure there are other people out there who have not heard about us yet. So that's one area we do need to work on, is obviously kind of expanding our role with the members, and also possibly reaching out to other people who are getting involved in repository type areas. Again, obviously we've been growing our links with the OER community, as shown by some of the talks that were given at the Portsmouth meeting, but also the research data side of things is becoming a growing area of interest. As Nick's just mentioned, we are a 5-strong committee. The chair, we are technical officer, web and publicity secretary, and also our external liaison officer. The committee cycles are 2 years, and we're coming up on a new one to flag things up to people now. The next committee cycle begins in January 2013. So if any of you out there has an eye on a position on the committee, start thinking about that now. There'll be more information on the list as we get towards the end of this month. We put out a regular annual members survey, and this year we received a 34% response rate from the community, which was nearly 100 responses, which was brilliant, which gives us a good idea of some of the things that people are thinking about, and it gives us a way of gives the committee a way of kind of planning what kind of activities we want to be looking at for the next year or so, or next 2 years. The report on the membership survey will be coming out very soon. I'll say a few things about some of the areas that came up as we go through this meeting. I think also one of the things I did want to flag out was the growing sense of maturity and confidence that I've seen in a lot of the repository community as a whole over the last few years. I've only been involved in repositories for 3 years, 2 years as the repository manager at the University of Warwick, and I think I'm starting to get a feel that we are, as a community, getting settled into where we are. We're getting settled into kind of the basics, as it were. I think we've got a handle on kind of publication repositories, and a lot of the membership are now starting to take a step outside of the traditional repository area, the kind of research publication side of things, taking a step towards more wider kind of responsibilities for research management within the institution, for research data management. We're getting more involved in things like the ref return as well. And I think there's a certain feeling that we're no longer kind of testing the waters, as it were. We're now kind of a confident group of people. So back to the membership survey. These things here were the top 7 things that came up that from the membership survey that members wanted the UKCoRR to be doing. Obviously, top of the list, facilitating exchange of best practice. That's obviously something that's a core part of what UKCoRR has been doing for many years through the mailing list and through meetings like this, and through our presence at other meetings around there. Obviously, advocacy and lobbying is coming up a lot at the moment. Whether that's, I mean, that is actually, the list is fairly similar to the list that came out of last year's members survey. There are a few things that have moved around, but those kind of core 7 things are still where people think we should be focusing, which is brilliant to see that we're focusing in the right places. I think perhaps the fact that the lobbying of school and publishing sector stakeholders has risen a little bit might have maybe a little something to do with the Finch report earlier this year, possibly. But obviously, I mean, these are areas that the UKCoRR are going to be looking at, concentrating on over the next year or so. Obviously, I mean, one of the things I want to ask you guys here today, do these look right? Do you agree with this? Is this what you think? Are there things that you've been thinking of since the membership survey that you think, well, actually, I didn't say it at the time, but you know, there's this one particular area I really think we should be doing something about. Are there any others that you want to add? If so, let me know, because I mean, obviously we want to be moving. I mean, the UKCoRR is a democratic institution. We only go in the direction our members point us. So, if any of this looks wrong, let me know. It's been a bit of an interesting year this year, I think. I mean, UKCoRR started out the year accepting the Jason Faraday Award from CILIP. That was at the beginning of the year. Obviously, during the year, with the new ref plugin for e-prints and certain other activities that have been going on, this year has been a little bit focused towards a certain research assessment exercise that we might, evaluation framework, I should say. So there's been a lot of focus in our community on there. Obviously, the big news this year, the Finch report came out during May, I believe. Everybody got very excited about that. There was a lot of discussion around those kinds of areas. Really energised the community. Obviously, in July, UKCoRR was featured, and members of UKCoRR were featured quite heavily in the Open Repositories Conference. Good to see that there was lots of people there. There were lots of the UKCoRR members presenting various things. UKCoRR itself presented a few things as well. Following that, we had the announcement of the new Research Council UK's policy on widening access to research outputs, which again focused everybody's mind a little bit. I've just been Jerry Lawson, who's our NERC representative today, will be speaking about this later on. He also asked me to mention that there was another press release about the budget for the RCUK policy that came out yesterday. Haven't had a chance to see it myself, but I'm sure I'll get a chance to look at it later on. Again, we had an interesting time. Unfortunately, at the end of July, we lost 2 members of the committee to more exciting commitments elsewhere when they changed job roles and moved out of the sector. So Katie and I came in as chair and secretary to start moving things forward again. And finally, we had Open Access Week, which is always an interesting year every year. Even if it is a little bit badly timed in terms of the UK university cycle, I know certainly I don't get a terribly great attendance to Open Access Week events, simply because all of our researchers just say, I can't deal with anything other than our undergraduates right at the minute. Talk to me in January about my research outputs. But it was lovely to see that there were lots of other activities going on around the UKCoRR members and in various other institutions. Lots of kind of talks about open access more generally. I personally attended a meeting of the Society of Biology, which is an umbrella society for a lot of smaller life sciences societies, mostly about their publishing arms. Again, in reaction to the RCUK policy, they ran an event at the end of Open Access Week all about where they thought they were going to have to go as publishers to react to the policy and what repositories could do to help or hinder, and kind of things that they were looking towards doing and the kind of ideas that they had for where we might be in 5 years' time. Obviously, more on that in a minute. So there's going to be some challenges in the next year, looking ahead. We've got a few things that we might need to be thinking about over the next 12 months. I know certainly, personally, Gold Open Access funds have been consuming a lot of my time recently, because amidst all of the, isn't it great that there's going to be more money for open access publishing, isn't it great that there's going to be a lot more work we can be doing in this area, think of all the advocacy options. There's also an awful lot of practical issues that need to be thought about. How do you divide up the money? Where does the money sit? Who controls the money? And that side of things. Again, reporting is going to be obviously a big issue for everybody. RCUK is going to require us to report on the open access status of our outputs. How do we do that? How do we make our systems talk to other systems? Can we talk to all the different RCUK systems in the same way? Do we need to talk to all of the RCUK systems in slightly different ways? Can our systems handle that? Is it really the repository that needs to be doing the talking? Or is it better that if we or is it better for our CRIS systems to be doing that work? One question I've got time and time again over the last week or so is, which journals are RCUK compliant? Which is proving to be a much more difficult thing to work out than might previously appear. Issues around licensing, about what kind of Creative Commons licenses are available from which journals and how. And in case of the Nature Publishing Group, by how much? As we discovered yesterday or earlier this week. Research data management is another one that keeps cropping up in my calendar and in the calendar of a lot of other people. Are we doing it in the research data management? Is it happening in your own institutional repository? Is it happening outside of your institutional repository? How does your data archive link up with your research outputs archive? How does everything link back to the CRIS systems? If you have CRIS systems, which currently don't, I would like that to change, but I don't see it happening. And again, obviously back to the Research Excellence Framework. REF is coming, and REF is going to happen this year. Sally is going to say a bit more later on this afternoon about some of the things LSE have been doing. Obviously, during the show and tell this afternoon, I can talk about some of the things we're doing as well, if that would be useful to people. Also, we're going to have some technical challenges next year. We already have technical challenges, but again, technical challenges are something that come up time and time again, and that's why we have a technical officer to look at some of these things. Interoperability obviously is going to be something that we need to look into. Again, as always, I mentioned it earlier, talking to research systems, talking to our CRIS systems. How do we link everything up? Again, looking at the choice of image for my slides, standards. What standards are everybody using? Does everybody need to be using the same standards? Is that something is that something that there's a role there for UKCoRR to look into? Do we need to start looking at best practice for standards? Is Dublin Core enough, as was mentioned earlier this morning? Again, looking at benchmarking, we've got some interesting talks, an interesting talk later on today from Ross McIntyre on RCUK, looking at statistics and things that we can all surface from our repositories. Can we use this kind of benchmarking and statistics as a way of silencing some of those possibly incorrect misconceptions that came out about repositories in the Finch report? Is there a way that we can use this to actually firm up our position in our institutions by providing them with the kind of statistics that they can handle easily? I think the most interesting thing about IRIS is obviously that it's going to be counter-compliant, which means we can start amalgamating our statistics for the repository along with statistics for all of our other e-journals and so forth, so that we can start making a really good case for the benefits that our repositories are bringing into our institutions. We're also going to have some advocacy challenges this year. Again, I mean, I've chosen this quote particularly because I think it is actually a well-argued quote from Professor Jones from the Royal Historical Society. Whether or not this is actually what the net result of this move towards open access is going to be, I don't think he's correct in that area. But these are the kinds of things that we're going to have to be facing in meetings with our academics. These are the kinds of things that they're going to start throwing at us. So we're going to need to have good answers for that. Researchers and publishers are going to have kind of concerns, and in some cases some researchers are also publishers through their learned societies and so forth. So again, I mean, as I say, I'm not putting this up because I think he's right. I'm putting it up because I think this is something we might need to, this might be an area we need to consider. And certainly we do need to, I mean, again, from the meeting of the Society of Biology, there's a lot of concerns from some of the smaller societies that this kind of move will actually lead to the end of their society, either as we know it or completely and altogether. Again, I mean, I don't think it's our place to find some way to answer that question, but I think it is important that we're aware that these are going to be the kind of gut reactions that people are having. So even if people are coming into a meeting and saying, oh well, you know, I'm here to, you know, hear what you have to say about open access, but if in the back of their mind they've got this little voice saying, but this could mean the end of my job, you've got to be, you know, I think we're going to have to be a lot more delicate in some of our advocacy, but you know, keep up the advocacy we have going. Finally, I've said an awful lot about challenges. I've said an awful lot about things, the doom and gloom side of things that might happen. It's not bad. I think there are lots of opportunities here. As I said earlier, there's a growing confidence in our community. I think there's a growing place for us to be part of the centre of the university. I think it's going to be a way, certainly, again, getting involved in the management of things like the ref return, management of the moves that policies that we need to put into place to manage our reactions to the RCUK policy, for instance. There's a real way for us who have been the little lone voices in the dark sometimes, shouting about open access until we're hoarse. I think possibly we might be getting to the kind of perfect storm tipping point where people might actually start listening and people might start coming to us for the advice that we've been shouting about for years. And I think this is the kind of thing that we need to be aware of and we need to be able to use, to leverage to our advantage. Certainly there's a few bids that I regularly put towards our university for development funds for the repository, for technical things that I want to do, that I've wanted to do for ages, but we just don't have the budget and the time or the manpower to do it. But if I can make a decent case that doing that will help us respond to the RCUK policy, will help us smooth the way for researchers to report for the ref, for instance, I think because there's chances that some of these bids might actually go through this year, which I think would be brilliant. And I think this is the kind of opportunities that we need to start looking out for as well within our own institutions. But as always, advocacy. But you know, we're good at that. We've had a lot of years practice. Finally, I mean, again, looking at kind of 5 years down the line, I don't know where we're going to be in 5 years down the line. It was a discussion that I've had a couple of times, both with our institute, both within the institution and externally, when they've said, you know, so what's the world going to be like in 5 years' time? Are we going to be 100% open access and we'll never have to worry about journal subscriptions ever again? I think 5 years is a bit of a short time frame for that kind of utopian future, as it were. But do I think we're going to be further? Do I think we're going to be further down the line with open access? Yes, I do. Do I also think that there's a chance that in 5 years' time something will come out of the woodwork that we were never expecting? Again, yes, I really think that is a possibility. I mean, I've had lots of discussions again around the end of journal publishing as we know it. So the end of journals altogether. So we move to article an article-based economy. So everything comes out just as an article. We no longer have the Journal of Applied Physics. We just have physics articles, or applied physics articles that come out. Is that possible? Maybe. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think there's a lot of changes coming. But I think we do need to be in a position where we can be reactive to those changes. So yes, 5 years. Looking down the line, 5 years. Anywhere really. And again, further on the point of change. Here is. I've got some topics for discussion at the moment. I think there is a change coming. I think we do need to be reactive to it. But I also think that the group of people who get drawn to working in this kind of area, who get drawn to working with repositories, with open access publishing, are actually the people who thrive on change. Because if we didn't, we'd all have burnt out at this job by now, and we'd all have moved on to something else. I think that the kinds of, certainly, as I say, I've only been involved in repositories for 3 years, and the amount of change I have seen in that time, in just 3 years, has been immense. And as you say, where are we going to be in 5 years' time, further down the line? So again, these were some questions I wanted to kind of throw out to you guys. What do you want to see happening next year? Where do you want UKCoRR to be? Are we moving in the right direction? Is there anything, is there anything we're doing that we're not doing that you'd like us to be doing? So as I say, it's driven by the membership. So we take our cues from you guys. So that's all I wanted to say today. So if there's anything, so I now throw the floor open to you guys. And I'm not going to be standing here in silence. Chris, go on, kick us off.
I just wondered, looking at the 7 themes that came out of the survey, I suppose looking at that, one thing that struck me about it was maybe in relation to an email you sent out yesterday, which was that survey about what the services the RSP should be providing, which seemed to be based around the skill set that's maybe required by repository managers and people working on repositories, and how you can improve that skill set. I'd be interested to hear about how people feel they can develop their skills and what needs there are. Clearly the RSP is there. The RSP is looking for ideas in itself. Is the RSP going to be the way in which repository managers enhance their skills, or are there other channels that it would be useful to explore to help repository managers and administrators develop the skill set they need to be able to pursue a number of issues that we raised there?
Again, I think that's open for discussion. Obviously, we have Nancy here from the RSP who can talk perhaps a bit about some of the things. But obviously, the RSP is a project, so everything's dependent on funding. That was something that came out in the survey as well. One of the areas that people suggested for future topics for future events was again kind of around continuing professional development and the kind of skills that people needed to do that. One particularly interesting topic that came up from one of the ideas for the lobbying institutional stakeholders was a suggestion that UKCoRR put together kind of lobbying templates, as it were, or something along those lines, to give a kind of an eye view that then people could then take away, tailor for their institution and use elsewhere. So again, if that's an idea that people like, then that's something that the committee can look into. I think also, again, coming out of the survey that went around yesterday, there's been quite a few people who've been saying, well, actually a lot of the events I've attended in the last year or so have all been the DCC events around the research data management more than pure repositories.
I think from the RCUK point of view, one of the things that we would like is knowledge from you about the interface between repository managers and publishers in a whole lot of areas, largely related to sort of copyright license conditions for particular journals and so on, but I'm aware that recently one of the reasons given for the lack of introduction of formal deposit mandates at HEIs has been that Elsevier has effectively said that if you've got a formal deposit mandate, you can't put it into your repository. So that's put the kibosh on the development of those sort of things. Is there scope? Should we get together now, UKCoRR and RCUK, and talk to the funders about the fact that repositories are there? We use the green open access as one of the recognised deposit mechanisms. Therefore, having a sort of anti-mandate policy like that is very counterproductive. So is that an area that the UKCoRR should be working together with other funders?
I mean, that's certainly something we could look into. I mean, certainly, again, with my UKCoRR hat off and my Warwick hat on, there have been other kind of political issues around why we haven't got a mandate. Obviously, the Elsevier policy is a fairly big one, but mainly I think it's to do with the attitude of Warwick academics not liking to be told what to do, and if they're told what to do, they tend to be even worse at doing it than if they weren't told what to do, which does make for some interesting advocacy applications. But yes, as I say, certainly working closer with I personally am open to working closer with anybody really in this kind of area. Again,
because it is one of the big advantages. We're giving money to the publishers now, so we can expect a lot more back from them.
Yes, and some of the relaxing of the licensing conditions.
Just for information, we've been giving them lots of money.
Yes.
It's more obvious the mechanism as well, isn't it? It's like fee-based.
And it might actually, certainly one thing that I'm interested to see reactions from, certainly amongst our academics, is how much more recognition the library will get for the amount of money it's spending when the researchers are having to interact with the process directly. It's not just the electronic journals appear on their desktop. So it might be more obvious, as Bev said, it might be more obvious that where the money's coming from. So
I don't know. One other area that would be very useful to know, and maybe the figures is there's an assumption out there that green open access is free. It obviously isn't, because of the costs of maintaining all of your repositories. It would be really good to have some figures of what the true costs of green open access are. So maybe you could help us with that. Do a survey.
any other comments, questions, queries, disputes?
Just in relation to that, that's an area that I've been thinking about a lot. I've been asked recently to look at article processing charges and post-Finch and the recommendations of that group. The consensus, the major consensus is moved towards gold. To the extent that an institutional perspective is right, we're going to have to pay ABCs, but we don't, because we can agree. And it's trying to educate your internal group as well as getting reliable data on that. That was something that the discussions really you and I have had recently, but I've really been thinking, nobody's right, we need to pay ABCs, but we really need to still try and focus on green as repository managers. We know it's a changing environment, and there's no easy way to do that because the mainstream has moved towards gold.
And also I think, certainly from a researcher's perspective, gold is possibly an easier one to think about, because you pay your ABCs and that's access.
It's less fiddly.
It's less fiddly. There's less people from the repository banging on your door saying, "Hang on a minute, this isn't the right version. Can you make sure this you've got this version?" The versions, don't have time to worry about versions. But again, I think possibly there is also an area where we might run into trouble again on licensing. That if people are paying gold open access fees, that they're going to think they've done open access without really understanding what license it is that they've paid for, which is another area.
But there is opportunity, isn't there, as well? In terms of what your library is spending, what your institution is spending, and saying, well, don't have to pay the executive fee, especially for RCUK compliant. An institution like my own doesn't get that much funding from RCUK, but it doesn't mean that we can't still benefit from the compliance or the decision. And I mean, it's
Well, unless there's anything else, I will, in which case, hand over to my colleague. I think it's Andrew next.
you guys still not able to go on? Can I just quickly ask, sorry to interrupt, but just one in the second, is anybody else struggling with EduRoam? I know a couple of people have. I've managed to get on okay. Have people been able to get on generally, or is there anybody that... Right, have you tried again recently?
Yes.
Still can't get on, but...
No.